This painting can shock even an uninformed viewer at first glance. A luxurious banquet hall, a man collapsing in horror over the table and reaching for his sword, two women rushing toward him. In the hands of one of them is the severed head of a child, blood still flowing from it. This is Peter Paul Rubens' The Feast of Tereus, a depiction of the climax of an ancient Greek story. The man is King Tereus, one of the women is his wife, and the other, her sister, holds the severed head of his son. Once you learn the story behind this painting, you will look at this composition with entirely different eyes. What is depicted in the painting? Rubens's work refers us to the myth of Procne and Filam, a story told by the Roman poet Ovid. In his Metamorphoses, Ovid recounts this famous myth in vivid artistic form. Long ago, Eryxthonius was fighting a war against barbarians who had besieged his city. The Thracian king Tereus came to his aid. Their victory brought peace, and the Athenian king Pandion, wishing to show gratitude, gave Tereus his daughter Procne in marriage. 5 years later, Procne asked her husband to let her visit her sister, who remained in Athens. She also mentioned that Tereus could himself travel there and bring her beloved sister for a visit. Eventually, the king set out for Athens, where Pandion welcomed him warmly and invited him to the palace. Tereus had not even begun to speak of the purpose of his visit when Philomela entered the room. Her charm and beauty stunned him at once. It happened that Tereus fell in love with his wife's sister in a single instant. He immediately began persuading her father to allow Philomela to travel far from home to see her sister. The girl herself, hearing such an opportunity, started begging the old king. She loved Procne dearly. Tereus, consumed by the desire to possess the young beauty, used all his eloquence. The old king could not refuse them. He entrusted his daughter to his son-in-law and asked him to protect her carefully, for she was the only joy he had left. From Philomela he took a promise to return soon. He was troubled by ominous premonitions but could do nothing. Soon the shore of Thrace came into view. The journey was over, and nothing seemed to foreshadow danger for Philomela. But Tereus had no intention of reuniting the sisters. He followed only his own desires. He dragged Philomela into a dark forest to a shepherd's hut and imprisoned her there. Her tears and desperate pleas did not soften his heart. The unfortunate Philomela cursed him. One day she rose proudly and declared that Tereus had disgraced his entire lineage. She promised she would escape and reveal his crimes. And if she failed, she would take her own life and still tell the gods of his wickedness. Her tormentor grew enraged, seized a knife in fury, and cut out her tongue so she could never speak of what had happened. Tereus returned to his wife Procne and told her that her beloved sister had died. Procne mourned her supposed death for a long time, while her husband continued to visit his imprisoned chosen one for his own pleasure. A year passed. Philomela showed remarkable ingenuity and found a way to communicate with her sister. The solution came unexpectedly. She often spent her days at the loom, being a skilled weaver, and after many months she created a tapestry depicting her entire ordeal. As soon as Procne received this heartbreaking message, she rushed to rescue Philomela. At that time, the women of Thrace were celebrating the festival of Dionysus, which explains the clothing of the women in the painting, so Procne could leave the palace without arousing suspicion. She found the hut in the forest where her husband held Philomela captive. The sisters were reunited at last and secretly returned to the palace. As the women sat together in one of the rooms, Procne's son entered. Hatred flared in her eyes. The boy resembled his monstrous father all too clearly. At that moment, Procne resolved to carry out a truly horrifying act that would strike her husband more deeply than anything else. She led her son into a distant hall and, turning away, stabbed him in the heart with a sword. Together with her sister, she prepared a meal for Tereus from the child's body. One might assume the act of revenge ended there, but it did not. Procne and Philomela cooked the child's flesh and served it to Tereus at the banquet. The king savored this revolting meal without suspecting anything, but soon he remembered his son and asked for him to be brought to the table. Procne replied, The one you are calling is already inside you. Tereus did not understand her words. Then Philomela, forever silent, stepped forward and threw at him the severed head of his son. Tereus understood everything that had happened. He drew his sword and rushed at the women. But at that moment, the Olympian gods intervened and transformed all three into birds, Tereus into a hoopoe and the sisters into a nightingale and a swallow. Without doubt, once you learn the details behind Rubens's The Feast of Tereus, you cannot remain emotionally untouched. The tragic story of violence, cannibalism, and betrayal is embodied completely in this work. The painting was created by Peter Paul Rubens between 1636 and 1638. Today it is housed in the Prado Museum. Procne and Filam are depicted in Rubens's classic style, voluptuous and partially nude. With vivid, dramatic expressions, they move toward the left side of the painting, where Tereus stands with an equally dramatic face. In The King's Gaze, Rubens masterfully captures the very moment of horror and realization. He leaps back from the women, overturning the table. His right hand reaches for his sword. His left hand is raised in a defensive gesture, a detail that adds even more tragedy to the scene. Rubens highlights Philomela, a fair-skinned, golden-haired beauty who endured a year of torment against her will, painting her in lighter tones. Against the red drapery behind Tereus, the entire composition seems drenched in blood. The artist also renders the falling objects from the table with astonishing accuracy. The painting is so dynamic that it feels as though you are standing right there. You are no longer merely an observer, you become a witness to a dreadful moment. Looking closely at the women's clothing, you can identify them as maenads. They wear leopard skins, and one of them holds a thyrsus behind her back. Maenads were the followers of Dionysus, the god of vegetation and wine. The thyrsus, a staff adorned with vine leaves, is one of his attributes. The astonishingly tragic plot of this painting, created by Rubens based on an ancient legend, still feels almost contemporary. The story of Tereus is a tale of human cruelty overpowering reason, of a young woman deprived of her voice and protection, of a marriage where trust and fidelity collapse. This myth forces us to reflect. How long can a person remain human? Why do base instincts so often triumph over morality? And where does justice lie, if it exists at all? What do you think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed exploring this heavy but important story with me, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. More stories of great paintings and the dramatic secrets behind them are coming soon.